As we get ever closer to Halloween, why don't we inject a little bit of havoc? We go back in time to one of my favorites, 1991. Let's see if nostalgia has given me rose tinted glasses or if I can see things clearly. I go back and I review Halloween Havoc 1991. Rate each match and overall the show. So after the open, hear what I have to say. Before we get too deep down into this rabbit hole of a mixed bag of a show, let me tell you what is not a mixed bag. Everlasting Survivors, All Day Long, Volume 1, from Gamble Comics, available now at Etsy.com. There are two covers, the Jeff Hicks cover, cover A, and the Nick Crook cover, cover B. There are very limited first printings still available, and when they sell out, they'll not be printed again. There are new covers that will be printed in their place. And so, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about why we're here. Let's talk about one of Young Oz's favorite things. That being WCW in 1991. So I remember clearly wearing out this VHS tape, not legitimately wearing it out, but playing it a lot. So this whole show is very nostalgic to me, and the show starts with a very good, meaning interesting open, where we see a haunted mansion, floating heads of all the wrestlers that look, ghostly or ghoul-like, since it's Halloween. So, it's pretty good for 91. It's pretty good for WCW. It's a vast improvement over the way things looked in the pre-Turner days, which were not nearly as polished as they currently look now. And so after that open rolls, we're ringside. We see that the ring is surrounded by a cage, sort of Hell in a Cell like, but also Hell in a Cell like in the fact that it's around the ring and not close up to it. But it's also kind of like the old the blue cage, because the climbing parts are really, really big, but they're not as thick as the old blue cage from old Hogan era time. But before we even start the first match, Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone throw to a package from earlier in the day, because one of the participants in the night, or one of the wrestlers, got attacked earlier in the night in the NXT parking lot. I mean, just the parking lot. Clearly, I know that if I didn't already know it, I know that Triple H is a fan of old Southern wrestling because of how much he had people get attacked in the NXT parking lot. But in that package, highlighting what happened earlier in the day, we have Eric Bischoff, who's not yet in a position of power within WCW, but just a C or D list commentator, ringside announcer, or ringside commentator, or interview guy, out trying to catch interviews with the guys as they show up. First we have Abdul the Butcher and Cactus Jack. Literally the only thing Cactus says is bang bang. Next up is DDP and Scott Hall. Hall playing the Diamond Stud at this time. Paige says a funny line to Bischoff, since they're real life friends and neighbors. At a period of time, I don't know if it's here yet, but whatever, they're real life friends. Paige is like, "Oh, they got you parking cars in LA, Bischoff." So that was funny. But after the joke is when Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes pull up, who are immediately attacked by the Enforcers, Double A Arn Anderson, and the living legend Larry Zbyszko. Larry the Cruncher Zbyszko crushes Barry Windham's arm in the door of his car as he's trying to get out. Dustin puts him over into the passenger seat and hops into the driver's seat and takes him off to the hospital. So this opening piece was pretty good at catching people up on who's doing what side people are on. Bischoff is throwing out little tidbits about, later on tonight this and yada yada that. So it was good as basically a cold open to tease stuff that's to come. So in that way, it was quality and it was well shot. I thought it looked good. So that was good stuff. As the package is ending, or that replay from earlier is ending, you can hear ring announcer Gary Michael Capetta, my childhood ring announcer. I mean, don't get me wrong, I heard Howard Finkel, but Gary Michael Capetta was my boy. But you hear him saying that, it's time for the opening contest, things like that, getting things hyped. And so he says we begin with our electrifying first contest, which is, a funny way of putting it. The order of entry for these participants of the match is very strange. It's not all bad guys coming out at once. It's not all good guys coming out at once. They're like sprinkled about. But the teams are El Gigante, which is Spanish for the Giant, Sting and the Steiner Brothers taking on Abdul the Butcher, Big Van Vader, Cactus Jack, and the Diamond Stud. Most of the heels, all the heels except Vader we saw in that parking lot footage. So, yeah, again, it was cool that it opened in that way, in the parking lot. But, so this match and this show is the introduction of the WCW referee. It's a helmet with basically a prehistoric GoPro on it. And they cut to this shot way too much throughout the show, but I'm sure somebody spent some money on it, and I get why they did it. But I'm just not really a fan of the referee as a concept. I just think it doesn't really lend itself to good visuals, and so yeah, that's just a little piece of nitpicking, if you will. But if you remember me saying earlier, the cage is so large that it's not touching the ring. Well, inside the cage there are caskets in the corners of the cage, and as this match is going on, it's the whole match is nothing but chaos. It's not even, there's not real wrestling happening. It's just punch kick. It's almost like a battle royal with how not wrestling is happening. But when guys are fighting on the outside, there are masked creatures that come out, not creatures but wrestlers, like creepers, whatever, who come out of the caskets. But the Steiners, man, they don't care. There's like, I'll just add you to this Murder City USA type of thing they're doing. So the whole theory of this match, this Chamber of Horrors cage match, is that at about the halfway, I say halfway, they don't announce when, but at some point in the match, they lower down an electric chair. That's why this pseudo Hell in a Cell thing doesn't have a lid on it. And when they're lowering it down into the ring, the Steiner brothers try and crush Cactus Jack with it, which is weird, and I don't know. Whatever, I guess it's a little bit of haha. They don't crush him, it's fine. But the whole gimmick of the match is there's a lever on the side of the cage that you have to flip to win, right? So you had to put an opponent inside the chair of torture, the electric chair, and flip the switch to end the match. But again, it's barely wrestling. It's nothing but chaos. It's weird. Like there's just one point where Cactus is on the outside with Sting, and Scott Steiner runs across the ring with a kendo stick or some sort of stick. Maybe it's a broomstick, whatever, some sort of stick. Cracks Cactus to the head, and instantly he's got a crimson mask. It's nasty. It's not good looking. I mean, there's one point where I ask myself in the notes, I'm like, is Sting bleeding or has he got somebody else's blood in his hair, because his bleach blonde hair is got blood red in it, and I don't know if it's Cactus, is Abdullah's, I don't know if it's Sting's blood, I don't know what's going on, but the the entire gag of this match, that throwing the electric chair switch crap, it's bad. So the switch keeps falling to the on position, but the chair's not going off. You see referees going to try and work with it. You see Cactus climbing to put it back up, and the cameraman, who I'm guessing didn't know this thing was at work, keeps shooting it like, oh, I'm supposed to. It's bad. So at one point, Cactus is climbing up to flip the switch, but he got to hold it up for the refs to tape it. Rick Steiner belly to bellies Abdullah into the chair of torture, the electric chair. Cactus flips the switch, and mercifully it's over. I give this a 1 out of 5 stars. It's chaotic. It's a mess. It's not a good wrestling match. So, in defense of it, though, I will say one thing that I remember distinctly. 5 or 6 year old me, probably 7 or 8 year old me, thought Abdullah was creepy as all get out. And, all the gashes in his head. Whew, I was not a fan of Abdullah the Butcher as a little one. And I mean that in the most positive way, because he was a really strong heel, whether it's this show or others. But post-match, we head to the back, and we see Eric Bischoff, now dressed as Dracula, with Missy Hyatt, who she's dressed up as a showgirl. And they're talking about this mystery of the WCW Halloween Phantom, and everybody's trying to figure out who the Phantom is. So that's an ongoing thread throughout the night. The Young Pistols walk up, and that's Steve Armstrong of the famous Armstrong family and Tracy Smothers. They take a shot at the WCW United States Tag Team Champions, Firebreaker Chip and Todd Champion. I think it's Armstrong. It could be Smothers, but one of them says a funny line. They say, are the Patriots' colors red, white, and blue, or just plain yellow? So I always cracked up over these guys. It's probably because I'm from the middle of nowhere. They reminded me of folks I knew. But after that, we head back to ringside, and we have a very, very pointless match. I do believe this match only exists because WCW Magazine had a write-in contest where if you write in raps and they chose your rap, the Rap Master PN News would do your rap live on pay-per-view. So we have a lumberjack in Big Josh teaming with a white rapper, PN News, and they're taking on a couple of hooded jobbers without names. They're just called the Creatures. Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone call them Creature 1 and Creature 2. I mean, they're portrayed by Joey Maggs and Johnny Rich, but again, within the match, nobody knows who they are. They're just, jobber 1 and 2. I swear the match only exists for the sake of the rap, or the magazine rap writing contest. I did have a thought, though, while watching this. I was like, if you're going to do an odd couple tag team, why not do Heavy Metal Van Hammer and Rap Master PN News instead of the Lumberjack, Big Josh, and PN News? But, I mean, then again, PN News and Hammer were both not very good, and at least Big Josh was portrayed by Matt Bourne, and he's a great wrestler. The match had no consequences. The only thing that barely stands out is the fact that Josh stands on PN News' back when he pins one of the Creatures for the 3 count. The match only went 5 minutes, 16 seconds. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't terrible. I gave it a 2 out of 5. It's a passable match as far as, like, nobody totally friggin' screwed up. So I guess that's a step above. Like, people actually did wrestling moves, so yay. But after that attempt at a match, that magazine promotional period, I guess is what you could call it, we finally get to the best match of the night so far, when we have beautiful Bobby Eaton taking on Terrence Taylor, formerly Terry Taylor, formerly Red Rooster, with Alexandria York from the York Foundation. I always loved Alexandria York's executive director gimmick of the York Foundation. She would come out with a laptop, and all of her boys would they would. So it was a bad guy group. So anytime they were down on their luck, they would leave the ring and go check out the computer. I mean, they even called Terrence Taylor the computerized man of the '90s, which that's a fun nickname. And so yeah, this is, like I said, it's the best match of the night as of so far. Everything has clean execution. I mean, of course it does. Beautiful Bobby and Terrence Taylor, they work hard to be believable when executing moves. And one of the things that really stood out to me is how good Bobby Eaton is as a good guy. Because when I think of Bobby Eaton, I think of his heel work with the Midnight Express, and so it's just refreshing to see somebody excelling in the way that you don't remember them. And so yeah, that was fun. I even took a note with how good these guys were going in the ring. I was like, man, in a world where Sting and Lex Luger weren't on top, I really believe that Terrence Taylor and Bobby Eaton could have been elevated to a higher level. So yeah, because here on this show, Sting is the United States champion and Luger's the heavyweight champion. But while watching the match, I was like, man, I must have subconsciously remembered Terrence Taylor's work when I first broke into wrestling, because I would powder out and I would answer my cell phone to try and get help to outsmart the babyface and do all kinds of his type of tactics. I mean, although it's not him specifically, obviously, but like, yeah, it was just fun. It was a great 16-minute match. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a very, very good match. Bobby defeats Terrence. Yeah, Bobby Eaton defeats Terrence Taylor with his Alabama Jam, and yeah, it was really good. Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross kept bringing up WCW's top 10, which, it's nice. It's nice that the commentators care about wins and losses mattering. It's nice that they put it over, and yeah, it was a very good match. From that good match, we lead into what's very much of a joke match. It's 8 minutes 16 seconds in totality. It's two guys who are clearly bad guys. It's Johnny B. Bad, managed by Teddy Long, taking on Jimmy Jam Garvin with Michael Hayes. But the odd thing about the fact that they're both clearly bad guys is that the crowd loves both sides. No matter what Johnny B. Bad does, or Teddy Long, or whenever Hayes helps Garvin cheat. So there's this one time, so Hayes comes out with a sling on his arm, and he winks at the camera when he helps Garvin cheat. And yeah, it's just funny how much the crowd's into him, because like Bad Street, Atlanta, GA, right? So the Freebirds, they got that theme song, so that they're doing the Atlanta Braves Tomahawk Chop gimmick to the crowd, and they're doing it back. And it's like I said, so no matter how much they cheat, the fans love them, and like, it's just a puzzling match. I never understood the Johnny B. Bad gimmick. Like, Mark Mero is a legit Golden Gloves boxing guy, and they even acknowledge it here in the gimmick. So he's a guy under makeup with like a puffy mullet, and yet they acknowledge, oh, he's a legit tough guy. So I never got it, but it was a very fine match. It was short. Like I said, the crowd was super into it, so that helped a bunch. Again, JR, he's putting over the top 10. He's like, oh, whoever gets this, they're working on climbing the ranks and stuff. So that was cool. So post-match, we're in the back with Missy Hyatt. She stops Bobby Eaton as he's walking by. He has a pumpkin under his arm, so that's funny, keeping up the Halloween Havoc theme of the show. So she asked him, she's like, Bobby, you gotta tell me who the Phantom is. She's like, I know you know. And literally the only thing he says is women. And then he walks off. It was a cute little nothing segment, but again, it's keeping that, keep pulling at that thread that there is a WCW Halloween Phantom, that they don't know who it is, and that everybody's out to try and figure it out. And so that was good that they keep that going. Whew. As we return to ringside, I hear music that makes me say, oh, hell yeah. So it's not glass breaking, but I know, because I've watched this show so many times, that music is for a pre-Stone Cold, stunning Steve Austin. And he's coming down to the ring with Lady Blossom. He's defending his world television title against the Natural, Dustin Rhodes. And this, spoiler alert, is my match of the night. It's just two great wrestlers out there wrestling great. JR says a line that I believe 100%, which is, if he could start his own wrestling franchise, which means, company, show, whatever, Steve Austin would be the first guy he picks up, which anybody who knows the history of Steve Austin and Jim Ross's friendship will believe that legit. And so both guys are so great. I swear, if Dustin could have kept himself together, or not together's probably the wrong word, but like in the right frame of mind when Steve was on top, they could have done great business with Vince. But it is what it is, and then time does what it does. But this is 100% a great match. If you've never seen it and you've never watched the show, you can skip most of it, but go back and watch stunning Steve Austin defend his world television title against the Natural, Dustin Rhodes. It's a 5-star classic. So as we're reaching the finish line, Dustin's bleeding, bleach blonde hair. It's made for blood. You can just ask Ric Flair or Sting or anybody, Cody Rhodes, anybody who dyes their hair blonde. It's like, oh, it's a recipe for getting color. But so we're at a frenetic, fast pace going into the finish, and as Dustin hits that big bionic elbow and doing all the chaotic stuff, we get 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Dustin goes down for the pin. 3, 2, and the ref's counting. But as the ref lands the third count, the time runs out, and Steve retains due to the time limit draw. Yeah, it is a very good match, and honestly, I love the television title gimmick. I swear that I'm shocked Triple H never introduced it in his version of NXT, but now that Triple H is running everything, I could totally see him introducing a USA Network championship or a television title of some sort on the 3-hour Monday Night Raw, and give them, like I said, give them 15 minutes and just say every week the television title must be defended. It's definitely a way to go. Personally speaking, I think that it's a way to make it's a way to make a guy, and even more than one guy, honestly, because in this way, Steve stays strong because he doesn't lose, and Dustin looks strong because if it wasn't for that damned old time limit, he would have been champion. So I really like the TV title concept. I really love this match. Like I said, 5 out of 5 stars. Post-match, we get an advertisement for the 1991 Starrcade Battle Bowl Lethal Lottery. Way too many names. Yeah, as the package is ending, we hear, again, my man, Gary Michael Capetta, he announces, from the Emerald City, the incredible, not me, Oz. And Oz, in this show and in this time in WCW, is a character that Kevin Nash is portraying. He's taking on a pre-Mark Henry, world's strongest human being, Bill Kazmaier. So, these are two big guys. I mean, Nash isn't as wide as Kazmaier, and Kazmaier's not as tall as Nash, but these two guys they're both strong muscle heads, but the problem is they're both really green, so things just come out looking lazy and rushed, and just thank God this match is under 4 minutes. It goes 3 minutes 59 seconds. I only give it 1 out of 5 stars because it is just, it's the highlight of the match was a test of strength, and that's not that's not saying much because it's two guys who shouldn't be on pay-per-view at this point. Or if they're on pay-per-view, they both need a guy like Pia News had earlier in the night, a guy like Matt Bourne or somebody with experience to help them through. Although I say that, in our next match, we have the very, very, very inexperienced heavy metal Van Hammer taking on a very experienced pretty boy Doug Summers. And the experienced Doug Summers did not help the inexperienced Van Hammer. It's a terrible match. Thankfully, it's only 1 minute and 13 seconds, but it's very, very bad. The only upsides are Hammer has great music. He has a wonderful look. He reminds me a lot of a young Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior. And I don't say that as a compliment because he reminds me of a young Jim Hellwig because he's not really ready to go. And so that's really one of the big downsides. This, once again, is a 1 out of 5 star match. It's a failure. It's a failure as far as good quality wrestling. And so, I have great news. After 2 1-star matches, we finally get another great wrestling match. And the 2 guys who had great wrestling matches are both on my shirt. Stunning Steve Austin, who wrestled Dustin Rhodes, and Flying Brian Pillman, who is taking on Richard Morton of the York Foundation in the finals of the first ever WCW Light Heavyweight Championship Tournament. So, Alexandria York, once again, out with Morton. Her and Morton have a promo in the back. You know, she's talking about being smart, and he's, you know, matter of fact, we got Pillman in the back. He's cutting a fiery babyface promo. Here's, you know, his energetic music, and he comes out, and it's, I just love Pillman. Like, the crowd is into him. Everything is, it's exciting, and it's well executed because, again, we got 2 guys who know what they're doing. Out there going full strength yeah, it's there's one point, much like the Bobby Eaton comment earlier from him and Terrence Taylor's match, I gotta say, it's interesting seeing Morton work the opposite side too. Like, so it was not surprising, but it was strange to think of Bobby Eaton as a babyface due to all his time with Midnight Express, but it's also strange to think of Ricky Morton from the Rock and Roll Express working bad guy. But here he is with the York Foundation doing just that against Flying Brian. And so at one point, Pillman's dominant, and he's got an answer to everything Morton's, you know, throwing at him. So Richard Morton powders out of the ring. He rolls out and he talks to, Alexandria York, and looks at the computer for advice on how to beat Pillman. So when he gets back in, immediately Morton cheats. So I was like, I guess the answer to beating Brian Pillman is to cheat. But yeah, so the whole match long, they're going back and forth. It's fast-paced action. It's not quite to that cruiserweight level we'll get to in WCW in, what, 5 years from now? Yeah, 96 is when it starts, I think. 95, 96? Well, you know, 4 or 5 years when we got the cruiserweights, you know, opening match of Nitro, Pillman and Liger. But this match, it sets the tone for what's to come. And, yeah, so the match concludes at 12 minutes, 45 seconds. Pillman hits a flying crossbody off the top, 1, 2, 3. It's a 4 out of 5 star match in my view. You know, if I was if I was being biased, I'd give Pillman 5 out of 5. But the match could have been a little longer, just personally speaking. And but again, everything was well done, so it's a 4 out of 5 good match. After this really good match, we have a match that was mostly just an angle. It lasts 1 minute 27 seconds, and it features Brian Pillman's former tag team partner from the old NWA WCW days. I think it was like 2 years ago now, in like '89, for about 6 months. Flying Brian Pillman teamed with the Z-Man, Tom Zink, one of Tony Schiavone's favorites. And so, like I said, this match is less of a match and more of an angle. Nothing's technically bad, but it's just the Z-Man losing to the WCW Halloween Phantom. I gave it 2 out of 5. Again, nothing's done wrong. It's just short, and it's short, and it's, like I said, it's more of an angle than a match. But because nothing was badly done, I'll give it 2 out of 5. In case you hadn't noticed, my basic rule is if it's bad wrestling, 1. If it's not bad, but it's not. Anyway, I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out. But like I said, I remembered an angle occurring after this match. I was even pre-taking notes as the match was finishing, and I was like, oh yeah, the real stuff happens post-match. That's where the angle goes down, and then the angle doesn't happen. We go immediately into the next match. It's the World Tag Team title match. The World Tag Team Champions, AA Arn Anderson, the Cruncher, the Living Legend Larry Zbyszko, defending against the WCW United States Tag Team Champions, Firebreaker Chip and Todd Champion, the Patriots. This match is once again an example of really what's been plaguing this show most of the night, and that is either inexperienced wrestlers having not good matches with inexperienced wrestlers, or what's happening in this tag match, which is experienced wrestlers having to carry inexperienced wrestlers to what is, in my view, a very fine match. So I gave this a 3 out of 5. The Enforcers win, but in my view, it's just clear as the day is long that Arn and Larry carried Chip and Todd through the match. There was just no doubt about it. The Enforcers were the masters of the blind tag, though. Like, any time that they wanted to do something nefarious, they were on top of that. And so, A1 to Arn and Larry. One note I did take throughout this, though, most of the show even, it's like, I was surprised about the guys Vince didn't pick up from WCW. Van Hammer, again, like I said, young Jim Hellwig, I'm surprised he didn't pick him up. Todd Champion, he was nothing but muscles. It's like, I'm surprised he didn't pick him up. I get not picking up Chip, he was short, but like, it surprised me at some of the choices that were made. So, after the tag match, that's when we get the angle that I remembered happening before it, but turns out it didn't. So, here we see the angle play out where Dracula, Eric Bischoff, is standing on the ramp, and he introduces Paul E, or he welcomes Paul E Dangerously, who is accompanied by Medusa. And he asks Paul, he says, "What is this earth-shattering announcement you say you've got?" And Paul E, he cuts a very ECW style promo, a promo that only Paul E can cut. He says how that Paul is too vile and too dangerous for broadcasting. So the championship committee, they sent him home. But he called up Medusa and he said, "Medusa, who's a man who can take out the beloved good guys here in WCW?" He was like, I'm out to get them. I'm going to start at the top with Sting. And so at this point, Paul and Medusa, they bring down the Halloween Phantom, and Paul says that Medusa, she found him a man who can do the work, who can take out the Stinger. And so as he's making all these proclamations, Medusa's taking the gimmicks off, which is funny because the Halloween Phantom mask was so bad that you could see the mustache of the wrestler, you could see the nose of the wrestler. it basically you could make out who he was, and even the way he finished off Z-Man, it was like Jim Ross and Tony, they're talking and they're like, you know that what there are very few signature finishing moves in this business, but that's one of them, and that's called the Rude Awakening. Like they basically just told you, it's like, yeah, this is Rick Rude, even though we haven't revealed it yet. So anyway, they reveal that it's Rick Rude. He cuts a promo. It's not nearly as strong as Paul's promo, and they even are playing music over it. Like basically, it's like an awards ceremony. It's like get off the stage, get off the stage. So they cut away from Rude and Paul and Medusa, and they throw to a video package. This is a package that, you know, like 5 or 6 year old me really, it was impactful. It made me fall in love with Florida and the Seminoles. Even though I didn't know what a Florida or a Seminoles was, it was just like, this package was like Rocky like. It's Ron Simmons running up the bleachers of his college team field, and his coach telling him, he's like, "Oh, you got it, kid," when he's lifting weights and stuff. It was just like, this thing was, it got me pumped. I thought Ron Simmons was amazing when I was a kid. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still think he was great as an adult, but like, this package really convinced me that this guy was the man. As the package is coming to an end, though, you hear Gary Michael Capetta do the ring announcing, and they were good at that blending of package into live action. And so the main event is a 2 out of 3 fall match, where the World Heavyweight Champion Lex Luger is accompanied to the ring by Mr. Hughes and Harley Race. He's defending against Ron Simmons, who's also accompanied by Dusty Rhodes. It's interesting. The ref, he sends Hughes back to the back before he even rings the bell. So Nick Patrick, good job, I guess. You know, ain't yet turned heel. Jim Ross keeps putting over how that these guys have had a rivalry since college, 2 separate college teams. But in reality, you know, like if you've watched Luger's life story on, if you watched Luger's Legends documentary on A&E, you know, he's basically, his success is what led to Ron getting into the business, and so, you know, I gotta say thanks for that. But yeah, Luger is so calm at the beginning. It's crazy how composed he is, and again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to compliment the production of this. This main event, it feels as if it's a main event. It's top level stuff. It's shot well. It's lit well. It's just good. I think that it could have benefited from not being 2 out of 3 falls, because just like every 2 out of 3 falls match or most Iron Man matches, this match loses the crowd in the second fall. So Ron wins the first fall with a spine buster, which is nice because that's how Arn won the tag match before. And so seeing 2 matches get a pinfall with a spine buster is really cool, because that move is so just a transition these days. But like I said, anytime you're in that 2 out of 3 fall match or Iron Man, people, the crowd, it just, they fall away for a little while because of knowing that second fall and even parts of the first aren't going to be the end of the match, or not know, but give that perception, you know. And so in the second fall, the crowd does die down, but they do that stupid WCW over the top rope DQ crap in the second fall. When Harley Race successfully helps Luger be underhanded, and so Luger gets the second fall by DQ, and they're fighting on the outside. Ron's going for a football tackle, and Luger moves. Ron hits the ring post. Luger rolls him in, hits a pile driver, 1, 2, 3. Luger retains in what I consider a 4 out of 5 very good match. Again, I think it would have been better to just be a straight up single falls match, but it's like, I get it, you want to have variety. So my final grade for the overall show, so after going over my notes, I was like, well, we had 3 good matches, which is 4 stars, but we also had 3 failed matches, which is 1 star. We had 1 5-star. It's a bunch of 2s. It's like, so overall, I just landed straight smack dab in the middle. I gave this a 3 out of 5 rating. I think it's fine overall. Book, and like I said, like I said in the open, it might be the nostalgia talking, because there is a part of me that has big love for this show, just because I grew up watching it regularly. But whether it's nostalgia or what, I give it 3 out of 5. I think it is fine. There's an interesting amount of good and bad, but before we get out of here, let me remind everybody, if you have not gotten your copy of Everlasting Survivors All Day Long, Volume 1, there are limited first printings at Etsy.com. This is the Jeff Hicks cover. This is the Nick Crook cover. It's cover B. That's cover A. Like I said, they're limited first printings. There'll be a link to the Etsy store in the description. So thanks for watching. Come back on Wednesday. Come back next weekend, and enjoy.